Always my soulmates. By Watermelon's Melon Felon. Chapter 24. Vine. Victor's mark was like a green vine that broke off into dozens of smaller vines, curling around his body. As other people, his mark continued to grow and grow the longer he went without meeting his soulmate. Soulmates were said to share markings, and that the longer they went without touching, the larger the mark would grow. And no other people on the planet, besides he and his soulmate, had the same type of mark. So Victor knew his vines were shared by only one person. They were unique, in a sense. No one could possibly try to mimic it because it was a full-body mark that hadn't been fully displayed to the world. So far, his vines curled completely around his body, starting at his lower back and trailing up and down, up and over his shoulders and down his toned thighs, curling around his legs in beautiful designs. His stomach and abs were covered in swirls of green that hugged him from behind. Victor liked his unique mark, especially since one strand of the vine was dangerously close to reaching his face. Soon it would be curled across his left cheek. It would make him appear even more unique than usual, and Victor was hoping he could at least get it to there before meeting his soulmate. Many people worried about their marks and what it meant, but he wasn't too concerned. If he met his soulmate, then that was fine. If he didn't, his body would be consumed by green markings and he would look otherworldly. Either way seemed like a win in Victor's book. Though if he did meet his soulmate, he hoped they were decent as a person. Perfect match and all that. This season, Victor had chosen his costumes so they just barely covered his markings. If he shifted his shoulders or moved his arms a certain way, people would be able to see peaks of his marks under his collar. Victor was all about surprising people after all, and he enjoyed their reactions when something new about him was revealed. But he didn't plan on revealing them unless they revealed themselves first. Victor wondered if this was the season where he'd meet his soulmate. He wondered what his soulmate was like. Yuri looked in the mirror and sighed as the green marking on his cheek spread right before his eyes. He would have to rethink his color scheme for the next season. The blue would clash terribly with the green, and he didn't want that to cause him trouble. Of course, Yuri wasn't exactly in the mood to be thinking about next season. He just failed spectacularly at the Grand Prix final, and to make it worse, his idol hadn't even known that they were competing against one another. Commemorative photo. My ass, Yuri mumbled to himself as he straightened his light blue tie. And instead of letting him wallow, Celestino, his coach of 4 years, was making him attend the banquet. He didn't want to socialize after his epic fail, but apparently he had to. "It won't be that bad," the Italian man said, a wide smile on his face that did not agree with Yuri's mood. For him, maybe. For Yuri, though, it would be hell. Socializing was never his strongest skill. "Oh, wow! You got drunk really quickly!" Victor couldn't help but agree. Katsuki Yuri had stood with his back to the room for most of the time he'd been at the banquet, and he'd only moved when drinking the various flutes of champagne that he was lining up on the table. Victor could count 16, but he didn't know how many Katsuki's body was blocking, and he was honestly considering going over in order to stop the other skater before his collection became far too large to manage. "Here he comes," Chris hissed. Together they watched as Katsuki placed his recent glass down and turned. Victor's eyes went wide at the green mark he could see on the other's face traveling up from under the left side of his collar. The green ended in a point just below his eye and got thicker the further down his skin it went, until it disappeared beneath his clothing. It hadn't been there earlier in the competition. "Damn, who has a mark like that?" Chris murmured, no doubt to himself. But Victor was curious and a little shaken at the realization. Katsuki was removing his tie and unbuttoning his shirt, revealing more glimpses of the green that stained his flesh. It couldn't be. An impressed whistle from Chris had him blinking back to the present. Katsuki had gone right up to Yuri Plazetsky, and whatever he said had the team flushing a bright shade of red and also got him glaring harder than before. Yuri handed his mobile phone to Mila, shouting something about picking one, and then tore off after Katsuki, who was swaggering around a new bottle of champagne in his hand. A few seconds later, the calm and peaceful banquet had transformed into a club. Or at least partly. Hip-hop was blasting from a small portable speaker that Mila carried in her bag. Victor didn't know why she needed to bring it everywhere, but it was there. And both Yuri Plazetsky and Katsuki Yuri took to the floor. Katsuki fell into breakdancing easily, getting swept up into the music and moving his body in ways that Victor hadn't expected, defying gravity in some situations and demonstrating his ridiculous physical strength. Yuri Plazetsky didn't know a thing about breakdancing. It was obvious in how he moved and tried to mimic the other Yuri. The teen did give his all, but instead of getting lost in the music, he got lost in his concentration. A usual fault of his, actually. It was why his PCS was always so low. Katsuki Yuri ended up winning, and no matter what Yuri Plazetsky claimed, it was an amazing victory. A well-deserved one. Of course, Katsuki's clothing kept disappearing and more green was revealed. Somehow, Victor found himself getting involved in the dance-off, and Katsuki led him into a beautiful flamenco with movements smooth and calm. He wasted no time in his actions and teased and taunted Victor into getting closer, into wanting to get closer. And they danced, even as the music changed into something more worthy of a tango. Yuri simply transitioned from one dance type into another, pulling Victor in close and smirking, and Victor's stunned gasp. His hands were extremely warm. Victor wouldn't think of it as anything but a swift and thorough seduction. Yuri was as good with his hands as he was with his feet, and proved such with every second between them. "You're a wonderful dancer," the younger man said lightly when he spun Victor around and placed a hand on his thigh dangerously close to a certain place that Victor was slightly hoping would accidentally get groped. Which was a first for Victor, having never had such thoughts about anyone before. The feel of Yuri's hand on his face was strangely nice. What was happening? "You're not so bad yourself, but I think I need a drink," Victor admitted, face flushed. He needed a break to reevaluate the situation and find out what was going on with his damn body. Yuri pouted, but finally relinquished him back to the crowd. Victor was quick to get his hands on some ice-cold water. He just danced a very sensual dance with a man who was strangely attractive and adorable all at once. A man who was very good at taking charge. A man who shined brighter than anything Victor had seen in a long time. He was sure that the flush on his face wasn't just from the dancing. Of course, when Victor returned, he found Chris and Yuri in the middle of a pole dance-off. 1. Where did the pole come from? 2. Where did Yuri learn to do such a thing with his legs? 3. Yuri's soul mark was exposed to the room as he was only clad in a tie and his black briefs. And the most shocking thing of the evening wasn't the fact that Victor had enjoyed himself for once, or the fact that he was sexually attracted to someone for once. Nor did winning gold mean anything to him right now. It was the fact that Katsuki Yuri's soul mark was familiar, and as Victor expected, the vine would grow over the cheek in enough time. Right on his face was a thin green line that trailed down his left shoulder and around his body, splintering off in many directions. His legs and arms were covered in green, like being hugged by a collection of vines. Yuri was his soulmate. Victor was blown away. When Katsuki Yuri awoke the next morning, he expected to find himself in his hotel room nursing a hangover the size of Russia. Instead, his hangover was being handled in an unknown room of far higher quality than anything he usually stayed in. He had to blink away the white flashes in his vision as he tried to sit up and take in his surroundings, but found his eyes trailing to the large, oddly colored bundle beside him. Said bundle was actually a person wrapped very tightly in a green and blue blanket. Yuri blinked twice in order to clear his vision up, because what he saw could not in any way be true. After all, why would Viktor Nikiforov be sleeping in a bed beside him? There was no possible way. But no, the vision of Victor did not disappear when he blinked, and when he reached out to poke it in the face, it merely shifted its head to the side. Victor Nikiforov was sleeping beside him. Yuri's head snapped toward himself, realizing that he was not clothed beyond his underwear and he wasn't under a blanket of his own. Why were they sharing a bed with Yuri mostly naked? What happened? Yuri, it's too early to be up. That accented voice was right in his ear. Yuri flinched away at the sight of Victor Nikiforov leaning over his shoulder suddenly, though he couldn't really go anywhere. The man's warm skin was pressed against Yuri's right shoulder, and his eyes were dilated more than what was necessary. Yuri? Victor, what are you doing here? The man smirked. As it's my room, I should think it would be natural for me to be here. Why am I in your room? You don't even know me! Victor frowned. I know who you are, Yuri. I take photos with my fellow competitors all the time, so we can remember the occasion. That's what the whole point of commemorative is. Yuri didn't so much as blink. You probably shouldn't offer things like that out of the blue. I was more offended than anything. It felt like I was being mocked by some unseen force to have someone I've admired for a very long time not even recognize me as a competitor. I may be a fan, but I am no common fan, and it came across as you just treating me like any other fan out there. Like I wasn't being taken seriously. As Yuri grabbed his head to steady his vision and stop the throbbing, he finally caught a glimpse of Victor's naked chest, which was very much on display. And something else was being displayed as well. A familiar mark. Yuri's eyes trailed down to his own chest, where indeed said mark resided. Victor had the same mark as him. I didn't mean it in such a way, I promise. I just saw you staring and figured you would want a photo with me. We have the same mark, Yuri murmured, ignoring the comment as he stared at Victor's perfect muscles. We're soulmates, Yuri! Victor beamed, wrapping an arm around his shoulders and pulling him in close. I had almost given up finding you, but the only thing to keep me interested was the fact that my mark continued to grow. He and Victor were soulmates, as in their souls had been predestined by some unknown celestial being to be perfect for each other, meaning Katsuki Yuri was somehow perfect for Victor Nikiforov. Somehow. Some way. Why? It wasn't possible. It could not be possible. He was dreaming. He had to be dreaming. Yuri! Why would he be the perfect match for Victor Nikiforov? The man was like a god on the ice. He was an international star and was well liked by almost everyone. Yuri was a nobody. There would be no point for them to be soulmates. Yuri! And Yuri had a headache, meaning he was hungover, meaning he drank enough to not only have such a punishment, but not even remember the former evening. What did he do at the banquet that ended up with him waking up in Victor's hotel room and Victor finding out that they were soulmates? Yuri! Are you okay? Victor's voice broke through Yuri's panicked thoughts as his warm hands came up to cradle Yuri's head. You look ill. Do we need medicine? Should I call for help? What do I do? We're soulmates! Yes, agreed Victor, much to his dismay. And I'm so happy that we are. What? You're charming, cute, nice, a lover of figure skating, and a skater yourself. If that doesn't describe my perfect match, I don't know what would. But I failed. Victor's silver head moved back and forth. No, you didn't. You competed in 2 qualifying events, winning silver and then gold. You got a 90.04 for your short program score, which was a new record for you and very good considering this was your first run through in the Grand Prix circuit. Something happened to affect your free program, and I have faith that had you skated to your full potential, you would have been on the podium. His jaw dropped and he couldn't help it. Victor Nikiforov knew enough about his skating career to know that he had set a new personal best. Even knew Yuri's score. My first time in the senior Grand Prix final got me a score of 89.14 for my short program, if you were curious. So it's not a bad score, especially on your first time. Yuri's score was higher than Victor's during his first time? How did you not know that? And I will remind you that I didn't start winning gold in the senior division until I had just turned 23 myself. You could be the person who takes over my winning streak for all we know. So don't sell yourself short. You're a good skater with amazing dedication that brought you to where you are. And if you're unhappy with this competition, redeem yourself at Nationals and 4 continents so that you can come into Worlds. Are you supposed to be encouraging competition? Yuri couldn't help but ask. Victor smiled. There is nothing wrong with positive sportsmanship. Besides, supporting my adorable soulmate is definitely expected. A wink was added in order to prove his words. Yuri couldn't breathe. Soulmates. Victor liked him and wanted him to be his perfect match. He said that Yuri fit the description of his perfect match. Yuri, not someone else. And he was touching Yuri like he couldn't help himself. His ridiculously soft finger trailed over Yuri's lower lip, pushing against the flesh, dilated eyes watching his own actions. Will you have me, Yuri? He wanted to, so very badly. It was all he'd ever wanted but didn't dare hope for. We don't know each other, he pointed out rationally. But we could. Victor insisted. He really wasn't going to take anything back or back down. He was serious. Yuri was wanted. His eyes flickered down to the green marking that had stopped just at Victor's jawline. We touched before it could spread any further. Yours too. Looks like it's trying to poke you in the eye. Are you sure you're fine with this? The man nodded. I can't wait to wear revealing costumes again. Everyone can see my mark now. Yuri wasn't going to get used to this easily. Victor, what happened last night? I don't remember much beyond champagne. Photos! You are amazing, Yuri! And Yuri promptly learned about his supposed alter ego and how sexy it was when he was confident, and how Victor appreciated his take charge attitude. He was going to explode. Victor smiled at his soulmate as he tried to find all of his clothing, which had been tossed everywhere as he got into bed the night before. Yuri was adorable and incredibly sexy somehow as he held a sheet over himself, too embarrassed to simply walk around in his briefs. It was a bit of a shame that all that skin was covered though. It was a new feeling for Victor, who found himself very much wanting to touch and be touched for the first time in his life. Perhaps they could educate one another in this uncharted area. He was looking forward to the relationship and anything that came of it. After all, Yuri was amazing, and Victor wanted to watch him bloom, much like their marks had. Victor was incredibly lucky. Yuri was so nice. And now he had all the time he needed to get to know his soulmate. Who knew that a soulmate would be this amazing? Major props to the being who decided to put he and Yuri together. They got something right.